Inside today's Locked On Canadiens, the Habs lose two top four defensemen and to the Toronto Maple Leafs.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 1045 of Locked On Canadiens. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app. Use promo code Locked On NHL to get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. I am one of your hosts. I am Scott Metla, and I'm joined as always by the active stick, Laura Saba. And remember, you can get us wherever you get your daily podcast, Google, Apple, Spotify, or on YouTube.com as well. 5 days a week, first thing in the morning. And Laura, to kind of give people an idea of what's going on here, we are recording this on Sunday morning. Yes, we know there's a Canadiens game tonight. However, I have work events and other things going on that allow us to not record it tonight. We will have your Rangers recap and 3 up and 3 down in the episode that will publish Tuesday morning. As expected, the Habs played the Leafs and Twitter was a cesspool. How are we feeling after a 4-2 loss to Toronto?
Honestly, the thing that bothers me about that is that the Toronto Maple Leafs were able to score 4 goals in such a short amount of time. Because if the Canadiens had just kept it tight during that period, this would have been a much closer game. And the Habs would be giving the Leafs fits. I mean, I was watching that game and it just looked like a momentary fall apart. I'm not trying to say that the Canadiens can match the firepower that the Leafs have up front. I'm in no way saying that. It's just like that unraveling for what was it? It was 6 minutes that the Leafs were able to score 4 goals unanswered. And then everything got back to normal after that. And the Canadiens were able to tighten it up. Now I do know, obviously, that they were out 2 of their most important defensemen. Also, poor Justin Barron. I feel like he was just kind of just trying to keep his head above the water in that game. But aside from that, I think the Canadiens were able to hold their own pretty well against Toronto, for the most part. And that's the thing that makes me upset, is that if it wasn't for that very short period of time where everything that could go wrong went wrong, we would be having a completely different conversation.
Yeah, and I kind of look at this game in one thing, in that the Canadiens dominated the first period. They played a very bad second period and then played really well in the third period. It's just that they couldn't get their shots to go in on things. They came back towards the end of the second period, but I'm looking at natural stat trick right now. At 5-on-5, the Canadiens were overall a better team. Toronto just took advantage of their opportunities in the second period, which is what good teams do. And part of that is Samuel Montembeault was just not good in this game. And I feel like we haven't said that very often this season. Credit to Kaiden Primo for coming in and actually doing a pretty stellar job in a situation that was not an easy one. He could have very easily just continued to bleed chances against. And he did a pretty good job steadying the ship there and getting them back together. I wouldn't be surprised if Montembeault goes to get today against the Rangers as hey, go back and prove this. You mentioned Justin Barron, surprisingly good on the metrics. We'll talk about the defense and everything in our next segment because there are reasons for that. It's just that there were a couple of goals, like you said, less than 10 minutes apart, that sunk this team here. And one was Austin Matthews, banks one in off of David Savard's skate. And for all the Leaf fans who told me that Slavkovsky didn't mean to pass it to Nick Suzuki, don't celebrate Matthews' goal then, because he didn't mean to do that. And I don't want to hear your bull crap about what is and isn't a goal. It's just one of those moments that Toronto is an opportunistic team that has the ability to take advantage of these situations. And I'm looking at the expected goals and everything in here. Everything Toronto did came in that second period. And yeah, maybe they took their foot off the gas in the third or whatever. But at the same time, I'm not fully convinced this is a good team. Yes, Austin Matthews and William Nylander are great. Didn't really notice John Tavares. Didn't really notice Mitch Marner. The defense looked terrible. like you're getting cycled by Michael Pezzetta and Colin White in this game. And I watched Tanner Pearson turn Morgan Riley into a pylon. Like, I'm not impressed by this team. You beat the Canadiens, who are eliminated from the playoffs and are not good. I'm not exactly, wow, how incredible for that. I'm happy the Habs showed some fight back in this game. Going down 4-0 can go one of two ways. You can either kind of put it all on the table and get your spine together and start going for it, or you can just get blown out. And we saw it in the game last year where they brought in the tryout goalie and Chris Weidman got really upset about everything. Guess what? Sometimes you take it to him. And Juraj Slafkovsky had an incredible pass. Whether he meant to do it or not, I don't care. It looked dope. Nick Suzuki, 33rd goal, 73rd point on the season. Cole Caulfield scores again. That's his third straight game with a goal. 23 on the season. All things considered, it could have been worse. And now we have to do the dumb thing because there's no Arber Xhekaj in this game. Michael Pezzetta ran over David Kampf, and all I ever could think is, well, now Ryan Reaves is going to get involved. And Ryan Reaves got involved.
And he did.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, and he did. And this was the thing. I was just watching it, and you could see they were having the words, as people say, oh, they're having words. And I'm like, the stupidest thing is about to happen. Don't do it. Don't do it. And like, my friends were
turned him down, which is like, out of everything there, Michael Pezzetta said, no, I'm not doing this. And then off the face-off, Reaves takes 4 cross-checks to him, which one, the officials know something is going to happen here. Like, they are aware that this is happening. Call a penalty. This is a guy who actively said no until he got cross-checked 4 times. He got forced up against the boards and basically didn't have a choice in the matter. He got his ass kicked, which, okay, fair. Pezzetta's a pretty decent fighter, but Ryan Reaves is in a different class than he is. And the difference in this is everyone's going to talk about how Reaves inspired this team to victory, like they weren't already winning by a couple of goals at that point. And he's in the box pointing at the scoreboard. Ryan Reaves finished this game with a 13% Corsi for and didn't do anything at all to help his team win this game. You took Michael Pezzetta off the ice. Congratulations. It's ridiculous. Pezzetta, for all of his flaws, was actually a positive player possession-wise in this game. Expected goals, not so much because he's not generating shots, but they're creating opportunities when he was on the ice. They were matched up fourth line to fourth line, and Pezzetta was playing better. Like, this whole thing is dumb. I hope they skate Ryan Reaves in the playoffs. What's he gonna do? Nothing. And it's all anyone wants to talk about. They could talk about how the Leafs defense didn't look great, how Samsonov, was fine. But where was Marner? Where was Tavares in this game? Where was any of the depth that wasn't on the top line? And yeah, you could say the same thing about Montreal, but the difference is we're not a playoff team and Toronto is. It's just one of the stupidest things, and it's made all the more annoying that Arber Xhekaj isn't there. So everyone thinks now that Reaves has won some kind of season series nonsense, and we have 2 more seasons of this.
For me, like, that shouldn't even have been a thing. Like, that really shouldn't, like, he said no. At that point, when he says no, like, who's the coward at that point?
Well, the guy who's cross-checking him 4 times. Like, Pezzetta laughed at him and was like, no. He knows, and the thing is, by the time they got the gloves off, Pezzetta's like, I don't want to do this. And he's just trying to hold on to get anything in there. And it's not going to happen. And the officials just let these things happen. And if you have a player who's actively saying no, and you can tell is saying no to a fight, and it still happens, what are we even doing here at this point? And you could see it coming. The minute Reaves got on the ice, it's like, no, absolutely not. Like, we don't need this going on right now. Like, out of every storyline from the game, it's the one thing I didn't want to dominate. You could talk about how the Leafs were winning or anything else, and that's all anyone wants to talk about because this is your personality now.
No consequence on the game. Like, literally no effect whatsoever on this game. It didn't change anything.
I was going to say, Toronto's still likely going to win this game because they should. They are a better team than the Canadiens are at this point, and you've tied yourself to, we beat up their 4th liner for the guy that we're paying way too much money for way too long. Like, congratulations. But the big part about this game that I took away is that the Montreal Canadiens are very clearly missing 2 of their top 4 defensemen going into this game. We're going to talk about what that means for the team for the rest of the season and potentially against New York coming up next. But first, the playoffs are right around the corner. And yes, the Montreal Canadiens will not be participating this year. But right now, we're watching Nick Suzuki and Juraj Slafkovsky continue to light up the score sheet. And regardless of where the Habs are in the standings at any point in year, we want to remind you that you can win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. It's our number one choice because guess what? You can win 100 times your cash daily in fantasy hockey contests. You can take a look at, Nikita Kucherov, as much as we hate him. Is he going to continue to light up the score sheet? Connor McDavid was chasing 100 assists last night. Is Austin Matthews going to hit 70 goals? You can pick from all these players and whether they record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, or more in a given game. And to win 100 times your bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. That's it. 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper. So pay attention, nail your picks, start winning big, and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you get a $100 match on your first deposit. Some terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. We are back here at Locked On Canadiens, and going into this game against Toronto, and I believe the news popped up on Friday, potentially after we had recorded, that both Arber Xhekaj and Kaiden Guhle were out day-to-day with upper body injuries after the Tampa Bay game, to which I then say, I'm very glad that Nikita Kucherov was punished at all for hitting a dude from behind and knocking him out, not only for the game on Thursday, but also the entire weekend back-to-back series where the Canadiens called up Justin Barron on an emergency recall. Credit to him. He played decently against Toronto, better than I've seen him play most games in Laval this season. But losing Arber Xhekaj in a game that was going to have that kind of nasty physical edge kind of is disappointing in that I am of the mind that, yes, Arber Xhekaj is more than fists and brawn. But at the same time, when you've got someone who plays 6 minutes a night running his mouth and acting like the toughest guy in the league, maybe he needs to be reminded of where he stood the last time he fought Arber Xhekaj, and that was on his back crying like a baby. And they play New York, they play Philadelphia, they play the Islanders, they play the Senators in 2 games against Detroit. Those are their final stretch of games here. Every single one of them is going to have a different level of intensity and physicality. The Islanders play a tough physical game, and that game's going to be dumb because it's the first game they've played since Brendan Gallagher elbowed Christ, I'm forgetting. I think it was Scott Mayfield in the head. So we know that's going to be unhinged. We know the Senators game is going to be unhinged because it's the Senators. The Flyers are always a chippy team. We got chippy last game too. And then the Rangers have, and I know that this is being recorded the day of the Rangers game, and we'll see what happens there. But it's kind of sad that 2 guys who have taken steps this year aren't going to get to kind of see out the end of this season here. And I'm kind of wondering, this is probably an audition for Justin Barron to be like, hey, this is your opportunity. Prove you belong here with Lane Hudson coming and potentially Adam Engstrom coming. David Reinbacher's already in Laval right now. This is, I don't want to say last chance saloon because that's a little bit hyperbolic, but at the same time, prove what you're staying here. And I know what the next question is going to be from fans, and we'll get to that in a moment. But Laura, against Toronto, it's very clear the Canadiens are missing some of that skating edge on defense and just some of that physicality in front of their own net.
Brendan Gallagher was suspended for elbowing Adam Pellet.
Oh, it was one of the defensemen. All the Islanders defensemen, except for Noah Dobson and Alexander Romanov, just blend together into.
No, I'm in before the comments is what I'm doing, Scott.
Oh, I was going to say, I knew it was one of the guys. Anyways.
It's a guy.
He did something stupid and got suspended for it, in which we were all very mad at him.
He absolutely should not have done. Like, that's, Anyway, sorry, back to the game. I feel like, we talked about Guhle, like, after the Tampa game, we were like, oh, we don't know what his status is. And then, we found out what his status is. Like, this is a team that on its best night is still defensively questionable, right? So I knew that was going to be something that was going to heavily affect the game. And so despite that, and I was actually quite surprised, Scott, when you said that Justin Barron's underlying numbers were quite good, because I thought he looked a bit lost. And maybe it's just the way he looks. I have no idea. But honestly, like I'm impressed now, like now that I have that context. But it's not a match. Like it's not a 1-for-1 substitution, right? You lose like Arber Xhekaj and Kaiden Guhle. Like Justin Barron's not really going to make a big dent, right? And I feel bad, but it's the truth. And for me, I think the biggest thing is the absence of Xhekaj just means that the stupidity is going to get worse. Like as we already saw with the Toronto Maple Leafs game, but also going forward. Guhle, however, is a massive loss in my mind because despite the fact that he's been playing on his offside, he has been playing incredibly well considering where he is in his development. And a lot of times, like he's one of the people that is the one making the smart decisions on the ice, right? And for me, it's less the physicality part, but more the strategy part, the tactic part. Like if you're missing somebody like Guhle, you have to compensate in different ways. And that in my mind is the big loss here.
Yeah, they both have the ability to move the puck and have that, edge to them that they are unique. And I'm not going to say unicorn because we know how the reaction to that is. It's they're guys that have taken strides to improve their game overall this year. And it says day to day, and day to day can mean anything. There's 2 weeks left in the season. Day to day could mean a game or two. A day to day could mean the rest of this week. And that leaves with a handful of games to play at that point. And I guess the question is, Justin Barron is an emergency recall. They have enough defensemen. Obviously, Johnathan Kovacevic comes in. You have Justin Barron as the recall there. I assume they're waiting on one of these spots potentially for Lane Hutson. And I know what people are going to ask. Are they going to call up Logan Mailloux and fill in one of these spots here? And I understand the thinking behind that. And we will get to it in the Rocket segment as well. But right now, too important to the team he is on, who doesn't have enough defensemen on their own right now because Justin Barron is now recalled. They have other guys to injuries. Jaden Struble is still up in the NHL as well. I just want to see this team. I was hoping to see it end as healthy as possible. I think Joshua Waugh is potentially near return here based on his injury timeline. We haven't heard anything about that yet. But I would like to see Joshua Waugh come back into this lineup, which means Tanner Pearson likely goes out, which is not going to hurt my feelings in any way, shape, or form here. But losing that 2 top 4 defensemen, you can argue whether or not you think Jack has a top 4 defenseman. He was playing top 4 minutes alongside David Savard. He's absolutely a top 4 defenseman on this team. It's one of those things that these are valuable games. They are intense for other teams. The Islanders are hunting a playoff spot. The Flyers are desperately trying to not blow it completely. The Red Wings are trying to go for it. They've got a couple of games left. And the Senators are the Senators. Like, these are games that matter to these teams on there. And it's valuable experience to be in that intense, in those moments. Because Kaiden Guhle played a lot of those games in, the WHL and in the, I almost called it the Calder Cup, the Memorial Cup. Arber Xhekaj, the same thing with Hamilton before he joined the professional ranks. But there was another level of intensity when you were battling teams who are fighting tooth and nail for their playoff lives. And I'm hoping that this is literally just, we held them out this weekend to recuperate. They'll be back in the lineup on Tuesday. But we have to figure out what is potentially next. Lane Hutson's potential last game would be the 13th, which leaves them 2 games to play. Unless they lose on the 11th, which is this upcoming Thursday, I believe. They lose on the 11th. I could see Lane Hutson in the lineup this weekend. Justin Barron would probably go back down to the Rocket, and you have Lane Hutson in the lineup. Admittedly, it's against the Senators, which I would just rather have Arber Xhekaj back for in the first place, but I can't think of a better time for that debut. But I think that right now this is just a team waiting on hopefully some good injury news for the first time forever. Christian Dvorak is day-to-day. What that means for this lineup, who the hell knows? And it's some good news to end the season is all I'm hoping for on this. Laura, do you have any parting thoughts before we move on to the final segment here?
Some good news, Scott. Feels like a tall order for this team and this fan base. We cannot have nice things.
I was going to say, we're going to find out that like Yuri Slavkovsky's birth certificate is wrong and he's actually like 37 or something like that. God, that'd be terrible. Anyways, Slavkovsky rules on if you don't think that assist last night was cool, you're wrong. Anyways, we got to move on. The Laval Rocket played a pair of games on Friday and Saturday. They got a split this weekend. We're going to take a look at where they are in the playoff chase right now and some good prospect news coming up in our final segment. But first, passion, drive, and patience is the formula for winning championships. It is also what keeps your ride or die vehicle alive. And eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. And that's because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, you're not burning cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home some huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Some exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is available only to United States customers. We are back here at Locked On Canadiens, and this is our, I guess we're going to call this a weekly thing now because people always want more updates on this. This is the AHL update on our half of the thing because the Canadiens had important games this weekend, as did the Laval Rocket in the AHL. Pardon me. They lost on Friday night to Syracuse. Team did not have much gas in the tank for that one. They lost, fell out of a playoff spot. And then on Saturday against Springfield, a team that they have had just a very nasty rivalry with from the outset, going back to the conference finals a few years ago. This was a game that featured Toby Paquette-Bisson running over Will Bitton, former Canadiens prospect, in the opening handful of minutes, fighting Bitton's brother. And then off the next faceoff, Riley McKay fighting somebody else. And just a game that was intense, nasty, and had 11 goals featured in it. The Rocket had a 2-0 lead, blew it, a 4-2 lead, blew it, and then won 7-4. It is one of the most ridiculous. I couldn't watch because I was at an event for family, and it was, I don't want to say stupid, but it was very, very stupid across the board. I am looking at the penalty sheet, fighting, slashing, cross-checking, interference, cross-checking, tripping, holding, roughing, misconduct, continuing altercation, tripping, roughing, misconduct, continuing altercation, too many men, and a game misconduct for abuse of officials. Like,
how hilarious is the too many men in that list?
I was going to say, like, it's the only one there that I'm not like, and maybe the holding penalty that isn't like, I was trying to harm somebody in here. There was a penalty shot. The Rocket gave up 2 goals in 45 seconds in here. Like,
good job.
It's just a game that went, wow, they're playing great. Oh my God, this is the worst team I've ever seen. Wow, they're playing great. This is the worst team I've ever seen. Hey, they won. Mitchell Stevens put together a hat trick and 5 goals in this game, or 3 goals in this game.
It's a game where everything happened.
It's a game where everything happened. 3 goals, 2 assists for him, 3 assists for Elias Anderson. Arnaud Durando, 2 goals and an assist, 2 assists for Emil Heineman, a goal and an assist for Philippe Maillet. Logan Mailloux had an assist in this game as well. Dobish made 31 saves, even not at his peak. He was very good on Friday night. And the big thing in here is that David Reinbacher scored again. And he scored a really, really nice goal. Mitchell Stevens put a pass across the offensive zone to the edge of the faceoff circle. Reinbacher collected it, walked in, settled his shot, and then roofed one by Vadim Zherenko to make it a 2-0 game at that point. Of course, they then promptly blew that 2-0 lead, but Reinbacher's looking more and more settled in his time in the AHL, and that I'm becoming a lot more of a believer in him. I don't think on his own he's going to be that dominant point collecting force on this team here. I do think he's going to be a really solid contributor, but I think with him is they need somebody who can activate and be that catalyst. And Reinbacher is very much a guy that is happy to start the breakouts, to be in the right position, and get the puck going in the right direction there. he's absolutely somebody I think is going to fit that role very well. And I know people are going to panic at that, but he has all the trappings of someone that you're going to be able to reliably plug and play wherever you want in the defensive lineup there and be okay with it. The biggest thing coming out of this weekend that I look at is that it looks like nobody's going to win the Jacob Perreault for Jan Mysak trade. Perreault's not exactly lighting up the score sheet, went without a point or a shot today. And last I checked, Jan Mysak had no points in San Diego as well. I understand why they made the trade, but something isn't quite clicking there. And I'm not sure if it's just a pressure thing or what, but they could really use someone like Jacob Perreault to step up on this team right now. Arnaud Durandeau, who had been quiet for the Rocket, 2 goals and an assist today I'm happy to see that. And Mitchell Stevens is someone that I highlighted, needed to step up. 5 points is absolutely that. Hat trick, 2 assists.
That's an incredible night for the guy.
He's the guy who last year, when they had injuries, they had people called up to the NHL, that he stepped up and was carrying this team on his back into the playoffs, so much so that in the game they clinched a spot, he got hurt selling out to block a shot, and his absence was felt in the playoff series there. So he's a key piece to this team here down the stretch. As of right now, the Rockets, 68 games played. They have 4 games left, 72 points. 2 of those games are against the Belleville Senators, who have 66 games played, 6 games remaining, also on 72 points. This week, the Rocket play Cleveland twice on the road, and then come home next week, the week after that, for a home and home with Belleville. Basically, it's the Rocket need to win out at this point, I imagine, to just to win, to get into the playoffs here. I'm looking at the playoff, the playoff primer here. This week, if you were following Belleville's schedule, you were cheering for Toronto on Wednesday and Rochester on Friday and Saturday. It did the weird thumbs up thing again. I don't understand why this thing does that. It doesn't make any sense. But you were cheering for the Rochester Americans and the Toronto Marlies this week. Rochester can clinch a playoff berth today. Toronto is just ahead of the Rocket in the standings here. It's very likely that if the Rocket make the playoffs, they're playing the Marlies in the first round, no matter what, which is going to be horrifying for everybody involved, because those games are always nasty and a lot of goals and everything else. But people should be cheering for Rochester going into this week here. With 4 games left, the Rocket can max out at looks like 80 points. They're not going to catch anyone above them, short of the Marlies going on a massive losing streak and missing the playoffs here. So put on your Rochester Americans jerseys, everybody, and we're going to be cheering for them to make the playoffs. And I realize I've talked a lot in this, Laura, so I apologize.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to mention about Reinbacher. You know how you were saying he could be plug and play. He's very reliable. I just wanted to kind of build on that a little bit. Like he's the kind of guy, like every GM and every coach needs a guy where you don't need to worry about him, right? Like, and Reinbacher seems to be that guy. And obviously on a good team, presumably everybody's the player that you don't need to worry about. Like in my mind, like a Nick Suzuki is a kind of player where you don't need to worry about him. You're going to put him in there and he's going to do all the right things. And Reinbacher is the same way. Like that's why I like Jordan Harris and Jaden Struble so much. You know, you're going to put them in and you just forget it. It's like a set it and forget it. It's kind of like a slow cooker, right? Like they will do whatever needs to be done in that moment and they make the right decisions. Whereas generally that's not necessarily the case with a lot of players with huge upside. With Reinbacher, maybe the upside is he's not going to be Victor Hedman, right? But he's going to be somebody you can put him anywhere you want, and he's just going to do whatever's needed in that moment and whatever's needed from his line mate. He seems to have a really good read on how to complement a line mate, a defensive pairing mate or whatever.
And that's the thing is I've noticed in David Reinbacher's game is that, hey, I'm going to make this play, and if it doesn't work out, I'm going to reset to where I need to be and try again or take a different route. There's not panic to his game, and some people may think that this may be lacking some intensity or some physicality or giving a crap, but he's just very composed. There's no panic to his game. It reminds me a lot of kind of like how Andrei Markov used to play, in that every time he's doing something is that he's just going to get back, and that there's not always that same like hustle and intensity it looks like, but they are getting to the right spots and doing the right thing. I'm very intrigued to see where he goes. I'm not sold 100% that he's going to be starting in the NHL next year, and that's okay. But there's such a good foundation for them to build across with this that I cannot wait for just this kind of thing to happen, honestly. Like, and then we see, where does Lane Hudson fit in? We're going to see Adam Engstrom's apparently having a hell of a SHL playoffs, where we anticipated him being here by now, and he's not, because they keep winning because he's playing so well. We will keep an eye on all of that. Of course, the Rocket play 2 games this week. We will be back. We will record Monday night. We will get your Rangers game and your 3 up and 3 down into that. Remember to follow us on Twitter at @LO_Canadiens, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. You can follow Laura at The Active Stick. You can follow myself at Scott Matla. Like I said, we will be back with the Rangers recap and everything for Monday. And until then, we will see you all next time.